Today on Newsgirls, Palantir's AI warfare, advanced targeting capability call into question all the times Israel says they've accidentally hit a target,
values-driven company, but it's like the values of this one guy.
The latest wicked press circus, and I seriously can't remember the last time a trailer has been built up this much.
Fine line between creative advertising and just like dousing everyone in your movie promo.
Marketing budget is similar to or even bigger than the production budget.
And was Amelia Earhart eaten by giant crabs?
8-pound tree-climbing creepy coconut crabs.
What exactly do you and your team think happened to Amelia Earhart?
We consider the mystery to be solved.
Welcome to Newsgirls.
I'm Wren.
And I'm Mabel.
Let's get into the stories.
So the Trump administration is using shadowy tech giant Palantir to create a mass database of information on every American citizen. And they're basically doing this by using hundreds of data points from bank accounts, student debt and disability filings, even medical claims. So of course, critics are sounding the alarm saying that Trump could use all of this information to push his political agenda by surveilling immigrants and punishing his opponents.
And so what's surprising about this is that it's actually for American citizens, because we've reported previously that Palantir is building software for ICE to track immigrants that would basically give them real-time visibility on immigrants' movements and their visa status.
And it feels like every big tech story that we've been working on, whether it's like immigration in the US or the war in Ukraine or space technology or like random, even the event app Partiful, has some kind of mention of Palantir. We've actually gotten so many requests to do this story, so today we're doing a deep dive into what is Palantir, a company that's referred to as the AI arms dealer of the 21st century.
And Palantir was founded after 9/11 to be the software that could have identified and stopped the hijackers in that case. So basically, they build software that helps organizations manage and secure data, enabling them to analyze and understand complex information. We're going to kind of unpack what that means throughout the course of this segment because it is complicated, but it was founded by Peter Thiel, who we've mentioned so many times on this show. He co-founded PayPal with Elon Musk. He's JD Vance's mentor, huge Trump supporter, and one of Palantir's first investors was the CIA.
And apparently the company is credited with helping track down Osama bin Laden. Although as journalists, we do have to point out that this hasn't been like confirmed, but the company has kind of like run with the rumor. And what makes Palantir so different is that it offers specifically tailored AI software as well as teams of engineers that actually customize that software. So it's like an AI tech company times consulting firm.
And the company has been a huge deal for a while now. So I'm sure everyone who works in tech that's watching is like, how are you just finding out about them? Because they've been credited with saving their customers hundreds of millions of dollars, detecting Chinese spyware on the Dalai Lama's computer, thwarting Pakistani suicide bombers, and they unraveled Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. That's crazy.
And it isn't this like huge company. It apparently only has 4,000 people working there, although it's worth about $300 billion.
Should I do the math? Okay, so that like 1 over 4,000 equals what over 300 billion?
Wren's doing the math in the corner.
So that's like 75 million per employee.
Whoa. And it's built on like a quirky tech startup kind of vibe. So the name Palantir is actually a nod to magical stones in the Lord of the Rings that are apparently used to kind of see anything that's happening in the world at any given time. Interestingly, in the books, the stones were invented for good, but then manipulated by evil forces.
No foreshadowing at all. And while they do a lot of work in the commercial sector with companies like JP Morgan Chase, Airbus, and Ferrari, over half their revenue comes from government contracts. So they've been awarded, by our math, $3.5 billion in government contracts, including nearly $1 billion just since Trump took office in January.
No, they've basically worked with every sector of the government. So the CIA, the FBI, ICE, the NSA, the Center for Disease Control, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, Space Force, Special Operations Command, West Point, the IRS, even the Army.
Well, speaking of the Army, Palantir recently delivered its first batch of state-of-the-art AI-powered trucks from its project Titan, which are supposed to streamline the battlefield process of spotting, tracking, and of course, blasting. So basically, these are lightweight industrial trucks and trailers that consume data from the air, land, and space and employ AI to analyze it to give troops quicker, sharper insights.
And it's been highly praised. A congressional report in April rated the highest and lowest performing programs in the Army, and it lists Titan as a star performer.
The next batch of Titan trucks will be delivered early this summer.
Palantir also made headlines in 2017 when it was roped into top secret Pentagon project Maven, which basically uses AI to process and analyze images and videos from aircrafts and drones and satellites. And then AI specialists use the software to automatically identify like buildings, weapons, and people in the footage.
Palantir recently closed a deal to provide this Maven software to NATO, and Ukraine's military has been using it throughout the war with Russia. So according to the CEO, Alex Karp, from the moment the algorithms detect their targets to when they're hit is only 2 to 3 minutes. And experts say the old process used to take 6 hours.
Which is such an insane advancement. And from our reporting, we kind of found out how this like Palantir Ukraine alliance came to be. So in 2022, Karp took a secret trip to Kiev and offered to supply Ukraine with technology that would allow it to be, quote, David to Russia's Goliath.
Well, since we're on the subject of Karp, can we talk about him a little bit? Because this guy is known for being eccentric. He cross-country skis for hours every week. He has the same body fat percentage as Michael Phelps at the Olympics, which is 7%. And he's obsessed with Batman, so Palantir's flagship project is called Gotham.
It's so weird, and his friends have said that he kind of thinks of himself as Batman, like saving the world from evil. So you could say that Palantir is like a very values-driven company, but it's like the values of this one guy. So it's kind of like working for an entire ideology. So he has said, we have a consistently pro-Western view that the West has a superior way of living and organizing itself, especially if we live up to our aspirations. So they're not just after huge contracts and money. It seems like if Palantir is doing a project, then Karp strongly believes in the cause.
Well, one cause he really believes in is Israel.
That a few people get wealthy, and if you said platitudes that were obviously stupid, you could...
You're getting wealthy off of killing Palestinians, with Palantir kills Palestinians with their AI and technology.
Oh.
Palantir has been supplying Israel with such advanced targeting capability that critics actually call into question all the times Israel says they've accidentally hit a target. For example, we all remember last year when Israel mistakenly blew up those 3 aid trucks from World Central Kitchen in Gaza. So people ask how that's even possible because this Palantir software is so exact.
Palantir has also been linked to some of Israel's most like notorious AI tracking programs like Where's Daddy and Lavender. So the first one tracks suspected militants and then notifies Israeli forces when they've returned to their family homes, which makes them targets for airstrikes. And then Lavender assigns people in Gaza a score of 1 to 100 in terms of how likely they are to be like Hamas related. And that data is what they use to make kill lists. So Palantir has denied involvement with any of these, although they've been like associated with these types of programs.
And Palantir isn't shy about where it stands. The company took out a full-page ad in the New York Times last year stating Palantir stands with Israel, just to let everybody know. And Karp said, we've lost employees. I'm sure we'll lose more employees. If you have a position that does not cost you to ever lose an employee, it's not a position.
So moving on to another Palantir program, even though we're trying to hit all the important ones, it's impossible to hit all of them because there's so many. We're going to now focus on its work with ICE. So it's been an ICE contractor actually since 2011, which is a lot longer than I would have thought. And it supplied software to the first Trump administration to carry out a border deterrence operation that basically charged undocumented parents as smugglers, which would obviously, as a result, separate them from their families. And this was in the hopes of kind of dissuading immigrants from crossing the border with children.
ICE has also relied on Palantir software to carry out a lot of notable raids, like the 2019 raid of Mississippi chicken processing plants, which was actually the biggest single-day deportation raid in U.S. history. They arrested 680 people, including parents on the first day of school, so children returned to empty homes. And in 2018, when ICE agents fanned out across the country and raided almost 100 7-Elevens, and Palantir software was actually already preloaded on all of the ICE agents' phones.
And so even after all these very aggressive raids, Palantir has chosen to renew its contracts with ICE. So in 2019, 200 employees tried to get Karp to donate the proceeds of the $49 million contract to charity, but obviously that didn't work.
Well, one of the costs of these controversial partnerships is a lot of criticism. Amnesty International released a report titled Failing to Do Right, the Urgent Need for Palantir to Respect Human Rights.
And last year, one of Scandinavia's largest investment firms actually sold all of its Palantir holdings because of its support for Israel. And even just working at Palantir can get you a lot of backlash. So Wren, if you want to tell them.
Yes. So you guys might have seen online that the party planning app Partiful was being canceled in the last couple of months. Well, it turns out it's because 6 of the Partiful higher-ups used to work at Palantir.
Yeah, why would we care about that when Partiful collects your personal information like your birthday, your contacts, your IP address, your location? They would only share your information with the government or a private company if they determine there's a good reason and it's necessary to.
And the term the Palantir Mafia has been like circulating around recently because everyone who works there is like clearly very powerful and well-connected. So Business Insider found that 39 major startup founders in like the AI, legal tech, healthcare spaces were Palantir alum. And they've been compared to the PayPal Mafia, which of course gave the world Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, all of those guys.
But many Palantir alum have publicly rebuked their former employer. Last month, 13 alum signed a letter urging Palantir to stop its endeavors with Trump. They said Palantir's leadership has abandoned its founding ideals. Big tech, including Palantir, is increasingly complicit, normalizing authoritarianism under the guise of a revolution.
The letter also said that executives abandoned their responsibility and are in violation of Palantir's code of conduct.
So we spoke to one of the authors of this letter, Linda Xia, about why she signed it, what Palantir projects specifically she's most concerned about, and how she hopes the company changes. And so what made you feel comfortable and want to sign on to this letter publicly?
We were part of like creating the product and selling the product and otherwise putting it out into the world. And in my view, that gives us a little bit of responsibility to say something when we see that product being used to advance undemocratic ideals, to be used for things that we don't believe in, that go against the values that Palantir has espoused.
And what projects at Palantir are most concerning to you?
I think the big one for me has always been ICE. Even when I joined, I think it was a bit contentious to me that the software was used at all. But specifically what is happening now with this targeted enforcement, and more recently, this idea that there can be a database that brings together data from tax returns and census information, I think is incredibly dangerous and potentially damaging, because data that has been collected for taxes isn't meant to be used for deportation. So that ruins the public's trust in its institutions.
We saw that a lot of what the letter kind of focuses on is how the values of early Palantir are being violated now with all of these contracts.
The reason a lot of people actually join Palantir because they believe in this mission, this thing that is bigger than ourselves. And part of that, I think, is the Western values. It's the democratic ideals. It is about human rights, and the company has shown very little interest in hearing more about that sort of thing. That marks a pretty clear departure from what was originally sold to us when we joined.
And it's important to note that the small company's influence and number of contracts is just growing around the world.
Yeah, they pissed off the disability community by lobbying for cracking down on benefits in the UK. They have a healthcare partnership in Japan, and it's very high priority for them to expand into Japanese military defense. Oh, and Alex Karp traveled with Trump on his recent trip to Saudi Arabia, and Palantir will play a role in that massive arms deal.
Right. A few weeks ago, the company tweeted, "Palantir is proud to deepen its ties with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia."
Yesterday, we finally had the release of the Wicked for Good trailer. First, it was in theaters, and then they released it online. And I seriously can't remember the last time a trailer has been built up this much.
No, it's crazy. There's literally a trailer for the trailer, but we're not complaining because we are #WickedHeads.
And this release somehow feels both early and late. Like, it does feel like Wicked promo has been going on forever. Obviously, the movie came out last fall. And at that time, they collaborated with more than 400 brands. So like Vera Bradley, H&M, It Cosmetics, Stanley Cup, Bloomingdale's, Gap, Aerie, Forever 21, and Crocs.
But part 2 isn't coming out until November, and usually movie trailers come out like 3 months before the movie hits theaters, so we have like 5 more months of Wicked promo, and then obviously the press circuit for after the movie comes out, and then everything for like award season, so it's basically like 8 months of Wicked.
I mean, I'm not complaining. I know you're not complaining. I'm sure there's people out there who are a little sick of it, but strap in, people. The first movie so far has grossed $750 million worldwide. So clearly this be everywhere all at once tactic is working.
But this did get Wren and I talking about how movie promos have become such like a circus lately in a way that it wasn't when we were growing up. Like before it was kind of like the trailer and then the movie comes out and then the celebrities do like talk shows and that was kind of it.
Yeah, now movies are going above and beyond to try to capture the audience attention. One of our favorite recent examples is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, because they had people dress up in ape costumes and ride around on horseback in New York and LA, and we just wish we had seen them.
Then there was promo for the horror movie Smile, which had random sporting fans stand and like smile creepily at the camera during baseball games, which is really good. And then, oh my God, I don't even remember this, but apparently all-star basketball player on the Nuggets, Jokic, dressed up as Gru from Despicable Me during the NBA playoffs, and he's like such a serious player. I'm like surprised he did that.
Then what happened?
They say I looked like Gru.
Why does that bother you?
It doesn't.
Then why bring it up?
Because they won't leave me alone.
They?
Guys, I'm not your boss.
Illumination's Despicable Me 4.
We have to mention Barbie because it broke the internet, which of course is amplified by the Barbenheimer phenomenon. Mabel and I actually covered it for CBS. Barbenheimer Day is finally here, but which movie will be #1 in the box office this weekend?
Will it be Greta Gerwig's sparkly, whimsical Barbie, or Christopher Nolan's more serious World War II era Oppenheimer? And I get why they're doing all of this, but it is a lot. Like, I roll my eyes now every time we hear about Barbie because they just went so hard with the promo. Like, there were pink McDonald's burgers and like every clothing line had a Barbie line. But there is a fine line between creative advertising and just like dousing everyone in your movie promo. We couldn't like escape the color pink for like a year.
You know what I don't get? I don't get why there's 12 different premieres, because now casts are traveling all around the world, like Australia, Hong Kong. Like, there's just so many different premieres. I don't know who's going to them. I don't know what they're for. They're not even correlated to the release of the movie in those countries. It's just to keep red carpet photos and interviews circulating.
And I feel like movies used to kind of do this press in a way that was creative, but not too much. So the Dark Knight promo is considered one of like the all-time greats. They took out this digital political ad of Harvey Dent, who is a politician in the movie. And after a while, the ad would start to like flicker and glitch. And then you'd see the Joker, who is obviously Heath Ledger, come on screen. And like, that's so fun.
But arguably, the greatest movie promo of all time was the Blair Witch Project, because they made everything seem like it was real. So the poster said, in October of 1994, 3 student filmmakers disappeared in the woods while shooting a documentary. A year later, their footage was found. So they made it seem like that really happened. And then they created a missing persons website and had each character's info.
And those 2 ads kind of served as the blueprint for where movie promos started to head. And of course, this new digital sphere has really shaken up advertising just because there are so many opportunities for people to see ads in promo without even realizing it. So this kind of was shocking to us. The average person sees roughly 100 ads a day.
That is way more than I expected. Like, I guess there must be so much unconscious messaging that we don't even process as an ad. But global ad spending for 2025 is predicted to surpass $1 trillion for the first time ever.
So to get all our questions answered on advertising trends, crazy movie budgets, and the most creative, cutting-edge ads in the past few months, we're speaking to creative director Ashley Rutstein from Stuff About Advertising.
Ashley, first we have to talk about this much anticipated Wicked for Good trailer that finally just came out yesterday. We think it's one of the most built up trailers ever, at least in our memory. What did you think of this marketing ploy, we'll call it?
It's interesting to see them make such an event of just a trailer, which was typically such a small part of the whole movie enterprise. But it feels like a smart move, especially for something like Wicked as a film adaptation that has so much history behind it. You know, people have read the book, they've seen the show, they've been listening to the album for years. So I think it really works when people have that excitement to see how it's going to come to life. But for something like an original film, I don't know if it would work as well because people just don't care yet. You know, you have to make them care first, and then they will absolutely go pay to see a trailer.
What trends and changes have you seen in movie marketing lately, just in general? Because Wren and I at the beginning of this segment are just kind of talking about how it has become such a production lately.
Yeah, the trailer thing is definitely gaining some traction. I actually just saw recently the new Now You See Me movie. I think it's the 3rd one. They had a thing to promote the trailer right before it dropped. They put a billboard up in Times Square and it just said, "Now you see me." There was a number to text. I think it said "Text for Magic." And there was a countdown on it. And there was just money kind of animating onto the billboard. I saw it on a TikTok live stream, texted the number just because I was curious. And I guess whoever texted the number during that hour that the billboard was up got money. So I got like $100 and something
Oh
for
my
texting
God.
this number randomly, because it's supposed to be like the characters in the movie, they've got this heist, they're splitting the money. So yeah, I think this is becoming a much bigger thing, especially for those sequels and reboots and adaptations and things. I think another big trend is just influencers and creators. I think that's kind of an obvious one, but you're starting to see creators and influencers going to premieres, movies, TV shows. They are always part of these premieres now. They're on the red carpet interviewing the stars. They're part of the press tours. They are just so ingrained in these campaigns now.
So, how big, if you can help us understand, how big are movie promo budgets?
I mean, when you just look at the numbers, it's astronomical to us normal people, but I think in the world of movies, it's just an everyday thing for them. So the Wicked marketing budget was 150 million. Their production budget, though, was 145 million. So this is pretty common where the marketing budget is similar to or even bigger than the production budget.
Oh.
It's more important sometimes than the production. A slightly, well, much smaller example with Get Out. Their production was 4.5 million. Obviously a much smaller scale movie, but for marketing, they put in 30 million. So they knew that there was potential for this movie to be big, so they really put money behind it with the marketing.
Wow. And we
Yeah.
know that you focus on like other types of advertising content. So we wanted to ask you, what industry have you kind of noticed doing really well in this field and that's been kind of the most creative with its advertising recently?
The beauty industry has really been impressing me lately.
Yeah.
The main thing for me is that I can just off the top of my head name so many brands in this space, and they're getting really creative. Like an example is Elf. They have been all over the place. I feel like they do something new every single week. But I don't know if you saw this, but there's Sailing with Phoenix, who's the creator that got really big for quitting his job and sailing to Hawaii with his cat. Elf dropped a care package off in the middle of the ocean to him. They worked with a pilot, put some goodies and stuff in there, and dropped it off in the middle of the ocean. And that was such an innovative way of doing a PR package.
And so that's an example of a very good, well executed campaign. Have you seen any like flops in any industry lately that you're like, how did this get greenlit?
Yeah, I think with flops, it usually comes down to a misunderstanding of your audience or just doing something that doesn't make sense for your brand. And a recent example of that is the Jaguar rebranding. I mean, the internet was exploding. They just took this luxury, prestigious heritage brand and turned it into something that felt like a parody. Their visuals were very outlandish and strange, and now they're looking for a new agency. I also see a lot of AI things flopping just because the quality is not good yet. And some brands are putting out fully AI created ads and thinking that it's fine. People have 15 fingers and it's just not the time to be putting out a fully AI spot.
We're glad you brought up like the AI because we wanted to ask you like, do you think this is a time in the advertising industry for a lot of like creativity because people are obviously putting so much money behind it, but then obviously on the other hand, things can get really repetitive, especially when you are depending on AI, things are getting like sloppier. Like, where do you think the industry is kind of like heading right now?
I think it's kind of a paradox. There is so much oversaturation with ads, but in order to cut through all of that, you have to get creative and innovative. And I personally feel like with AI, especially, AI is generating based off of what's already out there. It's learning from existing content, so it can't really innovate in the way that humans can. So I think that's going to drive even more need for human creativity because the more and more people that use AI, the more ads that are going to seem exactly the same.
Are there any other trends that we should expect to see throughout advertisements as the year progresses?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more offline stuff. There's just so much fatigue around the internet and it's mentally draining. So people are seeking more and more offline experiences. I think print is going to come back, whether it's magazines or just any form of a tactile thing that you can, hold in your hand. Brands doing more to actively engage their audience. So they're not just talking at them, they're doing things like book clubs and run clubs and inviting them on brand trips just because people are desperate for a break from their phones.
Was Amelia Earhart eaten by giant crabs after living like a castaway when her plane crashed on a deserted island? Because recent evidence points to yes.
So a small group of historic aircraft hunters actually traveled to Gardner Island, which is like in the middle of nowhere, Pacific Ocean, where Earhart probably crashed. And this island is known for giant 8-pound tree-climbing creepy coconut crabs.
Yeah, these crabs are bigger than a notebook, and they literally eat seagulls. They're also known for cleaning carcasses, like when an animal dies. So if Earhart did crash and ultimately die there, as this group thinks, the crabs could hold the secret to what happened to her remains.
Which would be crazy because that is the mystery that has everyone so obsessed with like what happened to Amelia Earhart. It's like what happened to her remains after she disappeared.
So in case you're not up to date on your elementary history class, we will refresh you. Amelia Earhart was one of the pioneer pilots, not just for women, but for everyone. Yes, she was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, but she was also the first person to fly from Hawaii to California and California to Mexico and many more.
And that's a huge deal because she made all those expeditions in the 1930s. So like women had just gotten the right to vote. And so their roles in society were so limited. So she was ahead of her time and encouraged women to reject social norms and pursue actual careers. Besides having her aviation career, she also launched a functional clothing line for women who live actively.
She seriously lived the American dream until it became a nightmare. In 1937, Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, set out to fly around the world. And the trip was supposed to take a month, covering 29,000 miles, and they made it 3/4 of the way through when
they departed from New Guinea heading to Howland Island, which was 2,600 miles away. And the flight was expected to be pretty rough, especially since they were supposed to land on this like tiny coral area that was really hard to locate.
Late in the journey, Earhart radioed that the plane was running out of fuel and that she was flying north and south on the longitude of the island to look for it. But that was the last transmission ever received from her.
And the world became obsessed with her like crash and disappearance. There's just so many wild theories about what happened to her. So this one that we came across is called the Irene Bolam hypothesis, and it's weirdly very popular. In it, Earhart was captured by the Japanese, and instead of like executing her, she was repatriated back to the US with the help of FDR. And then she lived out the rest of her life in secret under a pseudonym as a banker in New Jersey.
I'm just going to say that one sounds far-fetched. More probably, a lot of experts think Earhart's plane crashed in the Pacific Ocean, so she and her navigator drowned. But other experts, like the group that we mentioned before with the crabs, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, believe that they crashed on a different island when they couldn't locate Howland.
So we're speaking to the executive director of the group, Richard Gillespie, to learn about his expeditions to Gardner Island, exactly what he thinks happened to Earhart, and of course, we have to ask about the crabs.
Can you kind of lay the foundation? What exactly do you and your team think happened to Amelia Earhart?
We consider the mystery to be solved. It's not a theory. It is established fact. Here's what the evidence shows. Upon failing to find Howland Island, the island she was trying to get to, she quite unintentionally came across another island. It was obviously not Howland, but she was low on fuel, facing the prospect of a ditching in the ocean and almost certain death. And lo and behold, this island had a reef that surrounds it that dried at low tide. She's looking down and it looks like a runway. So she chose wisely, put down the wheels, put down the flaps, and make a landing. And it was a successful landing. And once she shut down, she could get out of the airplane. But she did have a problem. She didn't know what island it was. Now, her navigator, Fred Noonan, could figure out where they were in the sense of latitude, longitude, which was a little over 4 degrees south of the equator. The problem was the map she was using ended at 2.5 degrees south of the equator. They had flown off their map. So she's on this island, obviously uninhabited, and she starts sending radio distress calls. And these calls are heard by the Coast Guard. They're logging the times, but they can't make out what she's saying. Meanwhile, other people are hearing these calls, including people in the US and Canada start hearing these signals. There's not many of them. There's a total of about 9 that we know about. And they stumble upon the right frequency, and suddenly they're hearing Amelia Earhart call for help very clearly. And they're astonished. And they say, somebody's got to know about this. And call their local newspaper. And the newspapers run articles about it. In one very famous case, a 15-year-old girl in St. Petersburg, Florida, her name was Betty Clank, is sitting in front of her radio, cruises the dial, like she often does, and she stumbles upon a harmonic and starts hearing Earhart. And she starts transcribing what she's hearing. And this goes on for an hour and 3/4.
Whoa.
And her father comes home from work. We got to get this information to the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard says, yeah, we know. We're getting a lot of reports of this. We're on top of it. So we have the notebook.
Wow.
And it's been verified. There's information there that Betty couldn't know was accurate. For example, Earhart is desperately trying to tell people where she is, but she doesn't know the name of the island. But there's something unique about this island. There's a big old shipwreck just down the reef a ways. SS Norwich City. It's a British freighter that went aground in 1929, but it's Norwich City. Betty writes down NY, or something that sounds like New York City. 3 months after she disappears, the British, who own the island, send an expedition there. They're not looking for Amelia. They want to check out the island as a future colony. There's a cadet officer who takes a whole bunch of pictures of the island. One of the pictures he took shows something on the reef that shouldn't be there, a dark spot. We gave that image to our forensic imaging specialist. Bottom line is, we're looking at the wreckage of a Lockheed Electra landing gear, one of the main landing gear. So we had good relationships with the U.S. State Department, Hillary Clinton State Department. We think you've got this nailed, and we want you to do your expedition this year. The Secretary of State is going to hold an event in the Benjamin Franklin Room, and I'm going to get up there and make my spiel, and we're going to bring in Bob Ballard, the guy who allegedly found the Titanic, and he's going to talk about it. And on March 20th, 2012, that's what we did.
Now, some of you may know that when I was a little girl growing up in Illinois, I was interested in all kinds of stories about women. And my mother was a real fan of Amelia Earhart's and actually told me about Amelia Earhart.
How long do you think they lived as castaways? We found the site where she died on the island and the remains of the campfire. There are burned fish bones, turtle bones, bird bones. Her partial skeleton was found in 1940.
I mean, we also saw that your team is the first to connect giant crabs, like giant coconut crabs that were on the island, to her remains. So can you kind of tell us about this theory and these crabs? Because we hear they're like giant and crazy.
Yeah, they're called robber crab because they steal things. These crabs, they're the world's largest land crab. They can climb a coconut tree, snip down the nuts, climb back down, pull the husk off the nut, and get into the nut and eat the coconut.
That's crazy.
They're awesome creatures. They are not aggressive at all. And they're kind of shy. They may have played a role in carrying off some of the bones after Earhart was dead.
The last question we wanted to ask you is like, what about Amelia Earhart's mystery keeps you coming back? Like, why? What really spoke to you about it?
From a historical perspective, it really doesn't matter much what happened to Amelia Earhart. What we do is educational. That's our purpose. We want to explore, demonstrate, and teach how you go about figuring out what's true. And that's something that's needed now more than ever.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe.
Next week, join us for a deep dive into the Trump children's weird businesses you've probably never heard of.
Bye.